Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good
Morning,
morning.
ma'am.
Morning. Good,
Good morning,
yes, good
ma'am.
morning. Good
Morning,
morning.
ma'am.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, ma'am.
Morning,
Good
ma'am.
morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Morning, ma'am.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Hmm. Manjuri, you're presenting something? Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. What were you presenting?
Actually, I was presenting this tab to the other two tabs where the students are present, but
Right.
mistakenly I have done something wrong, so I've just closed it and
Okay,
trying.
okay. It's all right, all right. Take your time. We have just a minute or so, or less than a minute.
Okay, ma'am.
Um,
Thank you.
hmm. And once the recording starts, please let me know. Okay. So we were talking about personal letters and formal letters. And now today we had moved a little forward with the nature of personal letters. I will go on with the discussion, but I would just try to give you the structure of the formal letters first, and then we will move back and forth between various kinds of subjects and how you deal with them, which are informal, which are formal, etc. So, yes, we were talking about how you sign off when you are writing to people you know very well, that is in informal letters. Now, there, this is called the subscription, if you remember. And if there are near relatives, then you are writing yours affectionately, your affectionate son or sister, or any kind of relation that you want to talk about. You can, if you're writing to your parents, then you can write your loving son or daughter, something like that. If you're writing to a friend, you could write yours sincerely, yours ever, your friend, and then under that, in the next and last line, you write your name. If you're writing to an acquaintance, for example, uh, you know this person, but maybe this person doesn't belong to your group of friends or not is not a family member, but nevertheless you know this person, an acquaintance, right? And then you go on to write yours sincerely, yours faithfully, yours truly. And then the signature. Now, in an informal kind of a letter, your name should be written below the subscription, and because this is an informal letter, your first name is required. I mean, in an official letter, your entire name would be required, and your middle name, if there is something like that, and your surname, of course, if you're writing an official letter or a formal letter. But in an informal letter, you're writing to a near relative or a friend or an acquaintance who already would know about you. So your first name would be enough, and never put a full stop after the signature. That is your name. Never put a full stop after that. So far, clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I
Yes,
will.
ma'am.
I have two things to tell you. That next Tuesday I'll be trying to send you these formats in a written form, so that if you take a look at the format, you will understand what I have been talking about in the last class and today as well. And at the same time, I will give you as many kinds of subjects that I can think of, both formal and informal. And in the meantime, let's see if we today we can manage to do not only the structure, the layout of the formal and informal letters, but also the email. So let's see how much we can do that way. Right. Now, the other thing is that I hope many people are there, and I still haven't received the Shikha Bhavan names, phone numbers, and emails. So if you could send me department wise names, phone numbers, and emails, that would be good. thing, right? Hmm. Okay, thank you so much. Now, yes, to return to the formal letter now. Now, we are talking about the formal letter having 7 divisions. If you remember, the informal letter had basically 5 divisions. So, the informal letter has 2 more divisions to take care of. Now, there you have the heading, of course. And if you remember the heading, then you are talking about how where you are located, your address should be there at the heading, the writer's address, the person who's writing the letter should give his or her address and the date. I told you how to write the address, how to write the date. Suppose you are being asked in a formal letter to write to somebody in your official capacity, then in the formal letter you will not give your home address. In an informal letter you can give your home address. In a letter to an editor you can give your home address. But in a formal letter, which is very, very official in nature sometimes, you will not give your home address. If you belong to a company, for example, you will give the company address, right? So remember this thing about the heading of a formal letter. The second thing is you are talking about I mean, if you think of a letter, just try to imagine a letter. I don't know whether your generation of the population in any country had really used letters or not. I don't know. Have you ever seen letters, received or sent letters at all?
No,
I'm
ma'am.
not very sure. No.
No, ma'am.
Yes, we do.
Oh, so you see, I'm talking
Only
about,
have written in exam purposes, ma'am.
yes, I thought so. Now, the only idea over here is that if you are looking at an envelope, for example, now at the top, to, and then there's address is given, who is supposed to receive this letter, and at the bottom left hand corner your address is given, that is who is sending, from such and such a person, your name, your address, your phone number, etc. So this from section, which means who is sending the letter, that should be there. That should be the same as the opening part of the formal letter, right? So at the top, you will put the same address. Now, it usually doesn't happen in this way, that in an official letter, in the letter itself at the beginning on the left-hand side at the top, you're writing your official address and outside you're writing your home address. It doesn't happen like that. If it is an official letter, in both cases, we use the official address, the address of the company, etc. Clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then there is another thing, the inside address of the addressee. Now, this is one thing which is an added kind of a thing to what you had in your informal letter. Because after the heading, that is your address and date, in the formal letter, you need the address of the name and the complete address of the firm or the individual to whom the letter is being sent. Same as what is written outside as sent to, that is the name, that is the address that you have over here. Clear? It is the same address. It is always the same address as is written on the outside of the envelope. Now, it is not indented. You know what indentation is? Indentation, of course, is when we are moving away from the margin and putting the words inside, a little bit inside the left margin. So this inside address of the addressee, the person who receives your letter is the addressee. The person to whom you are addressing the letter is called the addressee. Now, addressee has a difficult sort of a spelling, ADDRESSE. So I was not mentioning this too many times. So the recipient, perhaps RECIPIENT, recipient perhaps would be easier to understand. So the recipient's address, name and address are there, and you do not indent it, which means you do not send it away from the left margin. So this is placed on the left a few lines below the heading. The heading is your own address and date. After that, you leave a little gap of say 2 lines or so, and then you write the name and address of the person who is going to receive your letter. The number 3 is the subject. Now, in an official letter, in a formal letter of any kind, uh, does it help now? You couldn't hear me clearly now. Does it help a little? Hello?
Yeah, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. So, yes, we are talking about the subject, which is the third important thing. And again, in your formal letter, you have the subject. In your informal letter, you didn't have a subject line, right? So the subject is where you are putting a very short line, so to say, where the purpose of the letter is being mentioned. And it should be mentioned clearly, and it is the subject is in the center. So the other 2 parts which had come before this, heading and the inside address of the addressee, those 2 parts were on the left hand side, according to the left hand margin, so to say. But this subject is absolutely in the middle of the page. Promila, it's still not clear. So at my end, is there anything I can do to help? Mm. Yes, Kaustubh?
Sorry, ma'am, nothing.
Okay, it happens sometimes, I understand. Now, if you're writing about the subject, just remember, suppose there is a reference number given in the letter that you have received. Perhaps you're responding to an official letter with a reference number. Then here you must refer to that earlier reference number as well. Because earlier references to letters would contain the subject with date and reference number. So in your subject line, you could write with reference to your letter number such and such, dated such and such. Okay, so that could be a subject line sometimes. Otherwise, you are writing. So perhaps you're writing about, as I said, perhaps you have asked for, you have sent some money to Amazon or something, and then they are not, you have not received the goods as yet. Therefore, you're writing a formal letter to them, complaining that I have paid the money, but I have not received the things. Therefore, what you do is, you are stating, you can write non-receipt, RECEIPT, of such and such a thing after payment, or complaint about, and then you go on to write what you are complaining about. It should be very short, but it should be very clear. Okay, this is the third part of the formal letter. If you're writing a letter to an editor, there also it must be made very clear what you're writing about. Perhaps you're writing about, we were talking in the earlier class about the garbage that is dumped in your entire area, not just your neighborhood or locality, but the entire area. Say the entire subdivision has a problem of this kind. So you're writing that in XYZ subdivision of this state, a recurrent problem. That kind of a regarding garbage disposal. That kind of a thing would be clear. Not very long, but it would be very clear about what kind of a thing you're writing and in which place, etc. Okay, recurrent, therefore it occurs repeatedly, and therefore you're writing about your grievances in a newspaper which has wide circulation, etc. So that would be very clear from even a very short subject line. Okay. Yes. So far, is this clear?
Ma'am,
Could
yes,
you please
ma'am.
repeat it?
Yes.
Yes,
Ma'am, could
ma'am.
you please repeat it?
Repeat which one? The last part.
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, the
The-
inside address which you were saying, it's not clear
Okay,
actually.
I was talking about the inside address as the address of the person to whom you are sending the letter. Okay.
Yes,
Suppose
ma'am.
you are sending a letter to the editor of the Times of India. So you would write to the editor, and in the next line you would write the Times of India, comma. In the next line you would write, if you know the address, you would write the address, and then in the last line perhaps you would write New Delhi, and you would put the pin 110001, something like that. So you see, this is the way in which you are putting at the left hand margin a few spaces, 2 spaces, 3 spaces below your heading, this inside address, which means it should be the same as the address that you have written outside the envelope, because this is the address to which your letter will go. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And regarding the subject line at the end, I was trying to say that the subject line should be short in the middle of the page, not the left hand margin, but the middle of the page. And though it is short, it should be very clear. The subject at a glance should be made very clear to the recipient, to the addressee. Okay.
Ma'am, you have to write the
Hello.
subject at last.
No, I, I have been talking about the formal letter, and I have just said that at the top of the formal letter on the left hand side, you have the heading, and then after leaving a gap of 2 lines where you don't write anything, again at the left hand side, you have the inside address. You write the inside address of the person who is receiving your letter, going to receive your letter. And then again, you leave a little space of a line or two. And then in the middle of the page, you write the subject. Okay? So I
Yes, ma'am.
have not reached the end of the letter. And always at the end of the letter, it is your signature that is there at the end of the letter. I have just started at the top of your letter. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So section 4 is about salutation. How you are addressing the person. After the subject, you leave a space of 1 line or so blank, and then return to the left hand margin. And what are you writing? Now, it depends on what kind of a writing, what kind of a person you're addressing. For people not known, as I said, suppose you are a customer writing to the manager of a company, you don't know this person directly. You just know that this person is the manager of a company. So this is a person you do not know. So you will just write either sir or madam and then a comma, or sometimes people write dear sir or dear madam. But if you don't know the person at all, how can the person be dear to you? So it is safer to write just sir or madam and then a comma. Sometimes, if there are more people, for example, in your address, if the company is named as Messrs, that is MESSRS, it means you are talking about more than one owner, perhaps. And you are not putting all their names. Perhaps there are 6 owners. You're not putting all their names. You don't know all their names. You just write MESSRS when you're writing the address, the inside address, that is, Messrs, and then the name of the company, and then the address, etc. When in your salutation you are referring to them, you don't know out of those 6 people, I mean, if all 6 people are going to look at your letter or not. So therefore, you can write sirs or dear sirs, etc. So there will be a plural, and then after that you can have a comma. Don't write the etc. I just said the etc. to show that it is written in this way. Okay, so sirs, SIRS, comma, or dear sirs, comma, and then you move on to the next line. So this was the salutation for people you do not know. For people whom you know a little, yes? You're trying to
Ma'am,
say something?
yes, ma'am. In this letter, can we use a respected sir or ma'am?
Uh, if there is somebody you really respect a lot, for example, you do not know the person, but uh, the person is in a highly respected, really highly respected office, then perhaps you can write it. But usually, for normal correspondence between one individual and a company, etc., we do not write respected at all.
Okay, okay, thank
Okay?
you.
So the manager of a company or the editor of a newspaper, you will not write respected. You will just write sir or madam. Okay?
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. Then, if you do not know the people, then this would be the standard practice. If you know the people slightly, even slightly, perhaps you have written letters to them earlier, or you have met them once or twice in your life, etc., then you can write, Dear Mr. Shetty, or Dear Mrs. Rose, or Dear Messrs. Kohli and Rao, MESSRS, full stop. Okay, clear? Because you know them a little, therefore you're writing dear, and then you're addressing them as Mr. Shetty or Mrs. Rose or Messrs. Kohli and Rao or whatever, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. If you're writing to the editor of a newspaper, let me repeat, it will just be sir, comma, or madam, comma. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay?
Okay,
Then
ma'am.
we move on to the body of the letter. And the body of the letter actually begins about 2 lines below the salutation. So, sir or madam, comma, and then you leave a little space blank, and then you begin with the body of the letter. Now, this is an official letter. You have no scope of going on talking about your personal opinions, etc. You have to keep it short and precise and to the point, right? Therefore, you go on to talk about your subject, because the person who is receiving your letter has already got an indication of what you're going to discuss, what you're going to write about in the subject line. So you stick to that subject. Clear?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Then we have section 6, which is subscription or leave taking. Now, at the end of the official letter as well, you earlier it was very, very flowery kind of a language. And if I write like that today, nobody is going to bother to read my letter any longer. Earlier, people would write at the last line of their letters, in anticipation of your kind attention to my letter, etc., etc. So that kind of a flowery language is no longer used. So in the subscription or leave taking, there are a certain standard kind of things that you use. Now, if you have written in the address just sir, okay, or madam, remember the salutation where you wrote just sir or madam for people not known or the editor of a newspaper. So accordingly, in the subscription or leave taking, after the body of the letter, you will write yours truly, comma, or yours faithfully, comma. Now the Y will be in capital, but truly, faithfully, not in capital. The T or the F will not be in capital. So sir, comma, or madam, comma, wherever this was the salutation, you will end it with this kind of a leave taking, yours truly, comma, or yours faithfully, comma, or even yours, right? And then if you have written dear sir or madam, or dear sirs, for example, you put in yours faithfully, nothing else. If you have written Dear Mr. Sethi or Dear Mrs. Rose or Dear Messrs. What did I say? Kohli and Rao, etc., etc., then you will write yours sincerely. Y will always be in capital, but not the rest. And after yours sincerely, yours faithfully, or whatever you're writing over there will be a comma. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the last part, this is the seventh and last part in a formal letter. This is called the signature. So, after writing yours truly or yours faithfully or yours sincerely, comma, in the next line, again at the left hand margin, you will write this signature. What is the signature? You will, in an official letter, you will write your full name. Okay. So you will write your full name, which means your first name beginning with a capital letter. If you have a middle name, then that also begins with a capital letter. And your surname, that also begins with a capital letter. So you write your full name as your signature. And, in an official letter, you write there is your signature, real signature, and below the signature within brackets you write your entire name, because your signature might be looking something like a scroll. Maybe people cannot understand your handwriting that well, or sometimes people do a lot of things with their signatures, and they're beautiful pieces of works of art, but you cannot really read the name. So in an official letter, after the signature, you have to put in within brackets, within first brackets, the full name of the person and the designation. So if you have written, suppose your name is Anil Kumar Roy. So after your signature, you have put in the first bracket. You have written Anil Kumar Roy over there. And after that, you go on to write your official designation. Suppose your official designation is General Manager, comma, the next line, uh, uh, Powerhouse India Limited, comma, and then you go on to write the just that, and you complete the bracket. It was the first bracket that you were using. Sender's address date is, yes, Priti. I'm taking a look at what you are sending. Yes, Priti, thank you. Sender's address and date would belong to what I was mentioning as the heading section. Then the recipient's name and address, yes. In the middle, the subject, absolutely right. Then the salutation and comma, so sir, dear sir, whatever. Then the body of the letter, you have to be brief, precise, to the point. The subscription, comma, signature, and within brackets, of course, your name and official designation. Absolutely right, Priti. Yeah, it's very clear. Now,
Thank you, ma'am.
okay, welcome. Now, when we are talking about, yes, uh, yes, Priti deserves your thanks. And in earlier classes also, there have been quite a number of friends helping all of us out. Yes. So, when we are talking about the signature, never write Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or anything before your name. Just the name. Okay. So, uh, for example, right now, Shumona Mukherjee. Don't write Miss or Mrs. or anything. Perhaps say Jyotirmoy, uh, and I cannot see your address. And yes, you would not write Mr. Jyotirmoy at the end after your signature, right? Just your entire name, not Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or anything. Now, sometimes there is an exception to this rule, and it is sometimes in the case of women, right? Sometimes there are women writers who put in brackets after the signature. For example, you think of, say, Rekha Segal, and then you go on to write within brackets whether it is Mrs. or Miss or whatever. But it looks a little clumsy, and it is really not required unless and until it has got something to do with your state of marriage or not being married, or etc. Otherwise, it's not required. In an official letter, we don't usually put these things. As I said, unless and until these are absolutely required. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So nowadays, we be very clear about this that we do not use any indentation except for the subject line. We do not move away from the left side margin at all. Each line begins as close to the left side margin, left hand margin as possible. And if you want to show that you are writing in terms of different paragraphs, say in the body of the letter, you're trying to use different paragraphs, even there, nowadays you don't require indentation. You just leave a little blank space between the end of the first paragraph and the beginning of the second paragraph, and that is good enough to show your teachers or whoever is receiving the letter that this is intended to be two separate paragraphs. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, if this is clear, then yes, we have talked about the ways in which we construct the informal letter and the formal letter. Now, I will at the same time go on to say a few things about the email. And then, if we have some more time, we will see whether we can come back to a discussion of the subjects, etc., or not. Right? So,
Excuse
what
me,
is the.
ma'am.
Yes?
Ma'am, official designation of the person we will write in the bracket or outside the bracket?
Within the bracket, your name and
Within.
official designation. So you write Anil Kumar Roy, and in the next line within the bracket, again beginning with the left margin, you write general manager, comma, and after that you write, as I said, India Powerhouse Limited or something like that I had mentioned, right? And then you close the back bracket.
Okay, miss. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody? Before I
Ma'am,
move on to, yes?
the last part after the subscription on left hand side or right hand side?
Left hand side, I told you in an earlier class that earlier we used to take it to the right hand side. Now, uh, in the last few years, we are always told to keep to the left hand side. right? So when we were children, school children, or during the period of our parents, grandparents, etc., we were taught that take it to the right hand side. Yours truly and the name, etc., would be on the right hand side. But nowadays, in the last few years, we are always told keep everything to the left hand side. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Except the subject, which is in the middle. Clear?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else? Salutation will be above the subject. No, salutation will not be above the subject. It will be the heading, which means if you are the person sending the letter, then it will have your address, not your name, your address and the date, then the inside address of the person who will be receiving the letter. Then third is the subject in the middle. The earlier two portions had been at the left hand side. Then after the subject, you have the salutation, sir, comma, madam, comma, etc. Clear? Hello? Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, of course, you can ask questions as many times as necessary. I want you to get it very clear because as it is, I can understand. Had this been a classroom, I could have shown you this entire thing on a whiteboard. I could have written, I could have made a PowerPoint presentation, and that would have been easier for everybody to follow. But I'm just speaking. So it's one difficult kind of communication that I'm trying to, mode of communication that I'm trying to establish right now. So ask as many questions as necessary. Don't hesitate. Right? Oh, yeah. Okay, okay. Okay, you're right. Anupriya, what is your question? If you uh, if you take a look at what Preeti had sent, then then you will understand that the sender's address, that is your address and date as the heading, then a little gap, then the recipient's name and address, that is there, then subject in the middle, this is the third part, and after the subject, again back to the left side, and there you have the salutation followed by a comma, and then after one line, you have the body of the letter, and after that you go on to have the subscription, signature, etc. So yes, the subject always comes before the salutation, sir, madam, whatever. Okay? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Anupriya, you write to us, and if you have a question, subject will be in the middle, absolutely. All the rest of the things will begin from the left side margin. Only the subject will be in the middle. Okay? Right. Okay. Any other question about the structure of the letter? Okay, then. Shall I move on to the format of the email? And okay. So the email, now you know about emails perhaps better than you would know about any letter. But even then, if it is a formal email that you're writing, you have to be very careful about a number of things. First, from. And over here, I have a point to make. This is something I'm reading out from a newspaper article about how you write formal emails. This particular article was written by a lady called Manasi Shah, right? And she made it very clear as one of the basics that you would have in an email. When you're writing from it, it is going from you. Now, at Bishwabharati, for example, we use over here formal email addresses given to us by the university. For example, mine is, as you know, some of you know, debarati.bondopadhyay at bisho-bharati.ac.in. So that makes it very clear that I belong to an organization, an institution, which is Bishwabharati, and I am officially working over here, right? So similarly, when you are writing a formal email, according to this newspaper article, you cannot afford to write something like, it's not your name even, perhaps. Just a minute. I was talking about something, then I'll get back to what Shopnil had written. I couldn't read it that quickly. Right. So I was trying to say, suppose you have been accustomed to writing, suppose your name is not Bubbly, but you write bubbligirl@gmail.com. Now, in an official email, you will not use that kind of an email address as the address of the sender. If you are writing an official email, then it should look more formal. Now, if you don't belong to any organization, suppose you're writing as a student and you don't have any official kind of an email address given to you by Bishwabharati, right? Then you will at least simply write your name, and then it can be at Yahoo, at Gmail, at Rediffmail, at Hotmail. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
But don't write something like that bubbly girl or handsome man at this, that, the other. It creates a very bad impression in an official email. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right.
Yes, ma'am.
The second point is, before moving on to the second point, let's see what Shopnil had written. Yes, Shopnil, what did you write? Uh, uh, okay, even after starting inside the bracket, do we need to write the designation from the same line as the full name? No. I told you very clearly, you write Anil Kumar Roy, and then in the next line, you write your designation. And there, after that, you write your the name of the organization that you belong to. And which is the second letter? I can't see properly. Can you provide what? Shopnil, read it out. What have you written? Can you provide what? Yes, I told you that in the next class, I'll be sending this to you. So you will get it in your next class. The same Anil Kumar Roy got to be Anil Kumar Roy, not entirely in caps, though sometimes in official letters people do write in caps, Anil Kumar Roy, the entire thing. But even if you write A capital, small, NIL, etc., then Kumar, K capital, small, etc., and R capital, even that is understood. Okay? So the person who receives your letter will be able to understand what your name is even from that. But sometimes people, yes, there is this practice that they write everything in capital letters when they're writing their name inside the bracket. Okay? Okay. Uh, And yes, as I was saying, I would definitely assure you that in the next class, you will get, I will not a presentation perhaps because you will find it difficult to capture, but I will send it to some of the class representatives or shall we say the 2 3 students who regularly get in touch with me regarding this class. I will send you uh, next Tuesday before the class, just before the class, some thing by email which can be circulated. Okay? So that will make it clear for you, I hope. Now, shall we return to the email? So, email from, and then we have done that part. What kind of email ID would be necessary in an official email? Then, to. So 2 also has this colon after it and the complete email ID of the person who will be receiving the letter. Now, as in the previous example, suppose I was talking about India Powerhouse Limited. So the official designation of the person will be uh, um, Anil Anil.K.Roy at indiapowerhouselimited.com, something like that. So it will look like an official address, okay, or .ac.in. Indian official email addresses often have that, especially if they belong to government organizations. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So from and to, these 2 things are taken care of. Then you have the date. The date automatically comes in, the date and the time. So the date and the time. Now, in an official kind of a letter, perhaps you're writing on a working day, which is not a Sunday or something like that, or not a national holiday. You're writing on a working day and within working hours, possibly. So you'll have to keep that in mind as well. Then the subject. And as I told you, the subject is always very important, both in formal letters and in emails. The subject has to be very, very precise. Now, in your email, even if it is a personal email, there is a subject line. This is a big difference between what you have in the world of letters and what you have in the world of emails. In an informal letter, you wouldn't write the subject. But in an informal email, personal email also, you write subject. In the subject section, you write something or the other. Okay. So perhaps
Ma'am,
yes?
ma'am, from, to, date, and subject all in the same line, or subject
No,
will
of
write in
course
the.
not. I mean, have you ever sent an email to somebody?
Yes, ma'am.
Then would you ever find from, to, date, and subject in the same line? Of course not.
No, ma'am.
So, first line from, second line to, third line date, fourth line subject.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So, fourth line, when you reach the fourth line and you're concentrating on the subject, in the email, even if it is a professional email or a personal email, it should have a subject line and it should be very, very brief, clear, and to the point. And these are absolutely must. Now, when there is a reason behind this, when you are sending an email, officially speaking, or to an official or a professional kind of a person, the person is bound to be very busy. The person will just take a look at the subject line, and if the person feels that this is just an advertisement, I don't need to take a look at it, it will just go to the trash can. Right? So you need to make your subject very clear. Now, in the date line, you take a look at an actual email, if you can. What do you find in an actual email? Hmm? You find, just a minute. Oh, just a minute. You find from, then you find to, then you find date, and for example, right now it's 11:20. So date would be 27 January, Jan 2022, comma, 11 colon 20, right? In emails, the date is also given along with the time. The date and the time come together. If you take a look at a real email, you will immediately notice that. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, so we were talking about the subject, and yes, the subject has to be short and very clear, as I told you. And then, I was telling you that for professional reasons, for the time that a professional person gets, you have to make your uh, subject very clear. So, repair of such and such a thing, that could be your subject, or purchase of such and such a thing, bulk purchase. That would immediately attract the attention of the professional person of the official in a business organization. Suppose you're writing to a friend who is very busy anyway, and you are writing, yes, in your subject line, perhaps you write your birthday or my birthday, something like that. Immediately, the person would understand what you're trying to talk about and would then go on to read the email itself. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is in terms of how you should be polite in your subject line as well. Polite in the sense that you don't want to waste the time of the person who is receiving your email. And the person might later on choose to go and find out your email from a number of emails by means of a very specific subject line as well. Okay, so if the person remembers that and not your name, perhaps. Right, so clear about the subject. And
Yes,
then
ma'am.
you have the salutation. And of course, the salutation will be the same. If you don't know the person and this is just an official kind of a mail, then you write sir, comma, madam, comma. Then you have the kind of writing, the body of the email. If it is an official email, keep it as short as possible. Hmm? Right? And then at the end again, suppose you are writing to the head of your department or perhaps the principal of your bhavana, then you would at the end, because you're a student, you would write what? Yours, what?
Yours faithfully.
Faithfully.
Yours faithfully or yours sincerely?
Obediently.
Obediently. If you're writing to a teacher, then yours obediently. Okay? Yours obediently is always very safe for a student if you're writing to a teacher. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, in your email, there are basically a few things you can never do. For example, you can never use short forms. For example, CU for SEEYOU. No, not done. Just C and just U. That kind of abbreviation. Then W8NG. Then number 4, UR and RPLY, waiting for your reply, not done. This is the SMS kind of language. It doesn't work in an email, formal, informal, any kind. Don't use it in any formal email ever, this kind of abbreviation. Or suppose you're writing UR, YOU apostrophe RE. No. YOU, then gap, then ARE. Okay? No abbreviations of any kind would be acceptable in an email because it is not professional to write in this way. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
And
Yes, ma'am.
your emails are supposed to be grammatically correct. There should be no spelling mistakes. And you should be very careful about the commas, full stops, etc. that you're using, because this will be in the public domain. Okay? And it is, if suppose you're writing to the editor of a newspaper, and the editor of the newspaper chooses to put it in the newspaper itself with all the spelling mistakes, etc., then what kind of a bad impression would it create? You can understand that very well. Okay?
Yeah.
So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
cannot afford to make spelling mistakes. You have to check your email repeatedly, and you have to use the kind of punctuation, comma, full stop, colon, semicolon, whatever you use in a real letter will be used in the same way, even in an email. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am.
So in the next class, I will send you this kind of a thing beforehand, which is, yes, let's see, Priti again. Thank you, Priti. Let's see what you have sent us. From sender's email ID, which should look formal. You can create an email ID which is formal, right? Then recipient's email ID, which is again something which looks quite formal. Then date and time, then the subject, then salutation, then body of the email, yes. Attachment, if any. Now, in your exam scripts, of course, you're going to find it a little difficult to give an attachment. But yes, in a real life situation, attachments definitely are there. And thank you, Priti, for pointing it out. And then you are writing yours obediently or yours sincerely, comma, etc., and your name, and not resignation but designation. Resignation, you don't want to resign, you want to write your designation. So as a student, if you're writing as a student, then you would write your name and then BA semester 1. Kala Bhavana, which semester do you belong to?
Semester 1.
Oh, you also belong to semester 1. Right. Uh, Now, so yes, your name followed by the year, BA, BMuse, BSc, etc. First year, your department, your bhavana, etc. Clear? I mean,
Clear, ma'am.
in schools, perhaps you're supposed to write even your roll number. I don't know. Okay? Okay, then. I think I'll stop over here today, and on Tuesday we meet again using the same kinds of links, etc. And yes, Shorindro, I can't read this. Shorindro, you're trying to say something?
Hello, ma'am.
Physical education, yogic science, I will check. Right? I am not
Yes,
very
ma'am.
sure, but let me check. Just a minute. Give me just a minute. Uh, physical education, physical education, physical education. No, I'm not very sure about physical education department. I've received something from the education department, and oh, incidentally, um, uh, could you find out anything in terms of the uh, ancient Indian history? I'm not very sure about receiving anything from the ancient Indian history department as well. Are there any students? If you could please send your name and email and phone number in a Word file. Okay? So thank you. We meet again on Tuesday. And in the meantime, I would need your names and phone numbers, especially from Shikha Bhavan, from which I have not received anything so far. And at the same time, I would also require the recording, right? Thank you. Bye. Okay,
Okay,
then.
ma'am.
Thank
Bye.
you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.